Welcome my channel, Middle Time.
Castle the Bastard Who Became King, the story of William the Conqueror. In the fog-covered cliffs of Normandy, around the year 1028, a boy was born under a shadow. His name was William, and though his father was the powerful Duke Robert of Normandy, his mother was a tanner's daughter, a woman of common birth. Because of this, the boy was called William the Bastard. In a time when bloodlines mattered more than bravery, William's birth could have doomed him. But fate, it seems, favored the fierce. When William was only 8 years old, his father died on a pilgrimage. In an instant, the boy became Duke of Normandy, one of the most dangerous and coveted titles in France.
Nobles Laughed. Enemies plotted. But William endured. Assassins hunted him.
Castles betrayed him. He saw friends murdered and loyalty bought and sold.
Jetse boy never ran. He learned. He watched. He waited.
By the time he was a man, Normandy bent to his will. His enemies feared him. His allies respected him. And across the English Channel, a crown gleamed in the mists, the throne of England. Water waved the storm of 1066.
In 1066, the King of England, Edward the Confessor, died childless.
3 men laid claim to the crown: Harold Godwin's son, a powerful English noble, Harold Hardrada, a Viking king from Norway, and William, the Duke of Normandy. William claimed that Edward had once promised him the throne. He claimed that Harold had sworn an oath to support him. But now Harold had taken the crown for himself. William called it betrayal. So he prepared for war.
He built ships. He gathered knights.
And when the wind blew in his favor, he crossed the channel with 7,000 warriors and a fire in his heart. Crossed swords the Battle of Hastings. On the 14th of October 1066, William met Harold's army near the town of Hastings. The English shield wall was strong. Rows of men locked together, swords and spears ready. But William was clever. He used feigned retreats, drawing the English into traps. His cavalry attacked again and again. Then, as legend says, an arrow pierced Harold's eye.
The king was dead. The English line broke. And William was victorious.
On Christmas Day, 1066, in Westminster Abbey, William was crowned King of England. The bastard from Normandy had become the conqueror of a kingdom.
The Iron King.
But taking a crown was easier than keeping it. The English resented him.
Rebellions broke out.
William responded with iron and fire.
Villages were burned. Land was seized.
Castles were razed across the countryside to crush resistance. He ruled with an unshakable hand. His word was law. His enemies called him cruel. His allies called him just. In 1086, he ordered the creation of the Domesday Book, a massive survey of every field, cow, and cottage in England. It was said that not even a pig escaped his record.
Sag the end of a Titan.
In 1087, while leading a campaign in France, William's horse reared beneath him. He was thrown, and his body crushed. Days later he died, alone, far from his throne. When his body was taken to be buried in Cannes, the church was too small. His corpse had to be forced into the tomb.
It burst. The smell drove mourners away. A king in life. A symbol indes.
But not even a conqueror could conquer time. Legacy.
William changed England forever.
He brought the Norman language, culture, and architecture. He replaced Anglo-Saxon lords with Norman ones. He built castles, imposed feudalism, and bound England to the continent in ways that would shape
Echoes of the Conqueror, the legacy after death.
When William's battered body was laid to rest in Cannaby, it marked the end of a violent, visionary reign, but not the end of his impact. The English people had feared him. The nobles had bowed to him. The land itself had changed beneath his feet.
And yet, the man was gone.
But his sons remained, and so did the kingdom he forged in blood and fire.
The songs of the Conqueror. William had three surviving songs: Robert, William Rufus, and Henry.
Robert, the eldest, inherited Normandy. But he was impetuous and reckless, lacking the cold steel of his father's rule. William Rufus, the second son, took the English throne as William II. He ruled harshly and died suddenly in a mysterious hunting accident, an arrow to the chest in the New Forest. Some whispered it was murder. Henry, the youngest, would become Henry I, the most cunning of the three. He reunited Normandy and England once more, and ruled with intelligence and ambition. But the stability William fought for would soon begin to fracture.
Our kingdom divided.
After Henry's death, a succession crisis erupted. His only legitimate heir, Matilda, was a woman, something the nobles would not easily accept.
Civil war followed.
England fell into chaos.
Brother fought cousin.
Barons seized land.
Castles burned.
It would take decades before order returned, and the Plantagenet dynasty would rise from the ashes.
Still, it all traced back to 1066.
To the moment one determined bastard stepped onto English soil.
William's long shadow.
More than just a warrior, William was a founder. The English legal system traces roots to his reforms. The architecture he introduced, thick-walled, towering stone castles, still dot the English countryside. The Domesday Book remains one of the most extraordinary administrative records in medieval history. The English language itself changed, absorbing Norman French and evolving into the rich hybrid tongue we speak today. His conquest changed the nobility, the land, even the names people bore. Anglo-Saxon names faded. Norman names like William, Robert, and Henry took their place.
Kerze a legacy carved in stone and blood.
For centuries, English kings would claim legitimacy through William. Even in rebellion, his name would echo. In Shakespeare's time, they spoke of him as a distant force who altered the course of destiny. Historians debated him. Was he a tyrant or a hero?
In truth, he was both. A conqueror, yes.
But also a builder, a calculator, and a man who knew that power is not given, it is taken. From his illegitimate birth to his iron crown, William proved that we could triumph over bloodlines, and that history often belongs to those bold enough to seize it. And so, the tale of William the Conqueror does not end with a fall from a horse. It ends with a nation transformed, its identity remade, its future forever shifted. He did not just take a crown. He redrew the map of England and etched his name into the heart of its history.
The world after William. Time marched on.
The castles William built grew moss-covered and ancient. The nobles he raised passed their names and titles to sons who would forget the fire that forged them. The English tongue itself transformed, mixing Anglo-Saxon with Norman French until it became something altogether new, the seed of modern English. And yet, William's ghost remained. Not a haunting in the dark corners of a tower, but a deeper presence, embedded in the laws, the land, and the identity of a kingdom.
The Norman Blueprint.
Before 1066, England was a patchwork of earldoms and shires, with customs rooted in Anglo-Saxon tribal traditions. The king was more a first among equals than a sovereign ruler.
William chateret cette balance.
He centralized power, claiming that all land in England belonged to him, and from that absolute authority, he granted it to his followers in return for loyalty and military service. This was feudalism in its most potent form, and it changed English society from the ground up. Even centuries later, English kings would refer to the king's land, the king's justice, the king's peace. These weren't just legal phrases. They were echoes of William's world.
Geöffnetes Buch, the pen enses Wort.
William ruled not just with the sword, but with the quill. His Doomsday Book was revolutionary, an unprecedented catalogue of land, property, and people. No such survey had ever been attempted in Western Europe. It allowed for efficient taxation.
It asserted royal control.
And it taught the world a lesson: a king who knows what he owns, controls what he rules. It would be another 700 years before a national census on that scale would be attempted again.
Bloodlines and broken crowns.
The Norman blood William introduced into the English aristocracy became the foundation of dynasties to come. But his conquest also planted seeds of conflict. Because the kings of England now held land in France, they became both subjects and rivals of the kings of France. For the next 400 years, this would trigger war after war, culminating in the 100 Years' War. Knights would ride, arrows would fly, and cities would burn, all part of the long shadow William cast across both English and French soil. Even the disastrous Angevin Empire, ruled by Henry II and Richard the Lionheart, can be traced back to William's dual identity legacy: a king of one land, a lord of another. Scroll from conquest to constitution. Ironically, the absolute power William claimed would eventually be challenged by the very institutions he helped strengthen. In 1215, barely a century after his reign, William's great-grandson King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta. It was the first time English nobles pushed back against the idea of divine monarchy, demanding rights and limits to royal authority. Without William, there would be no need for a Magna Carta, but without him, there would be no strong monarchy to resist. His reign laid the groundwork for both autocracy and liberty. DNA: a legacy woven into DNA. Modern studies have shown that many British people today carry Norman DNA, a quiet genetic reminder of the conquest that changed everything. Even their surnames, Fitzgerald, Neville, de Clare, carry the sound of William's legacy. The language spoken on the streets of London is a blend of Saxon earth and Norman elegance, just like the country itself.
The quiet footsteps of Agiant.
Today, if you walk the wind-swept cliffs of Normandy,